Okay, so thank you for coming to the post-lunch session. I hope you guys are awake enough, but I have goodies to wake you, just in case you feel sleepy. So today's talk is going to be on agile testing. I am a group program manager in Visual Studio ALM, and I build the testing tools that we ship out of ALM. Essentially, we want to make sure that all of our Visual Studio users are set up to build high-quality applications using our tools. So all of the quality enablement scenarios that we build, all kinds of testing used by both developers and testers gets built out of my team. I also have with me Sumit here from SkyTab, who's basically a Visual Studio partner. They provide us with cloud solutions to instantiate dev test environments, and we'll see a demo of how to use their cloud to set up dev test environments to do more agile testing with Visual Studio. So before we begin, I should probably check if, OK, I don't seem to have a slide clicker, so I'm going to stand here. So the agenda for the talk is pretty simple. I'll be talking about what is agile testing, why is it even interesting to both developers and testers, what are some of the common challenges that we encounter while trying to do agile testing on teams, and in conclusion, we'll talk about some of the learnings we've had. I've been a developer and a tester and a program manager for the last 10 years with Microsoft, so I've played different roles, and I've sort of experienced some of the challenges that come with agile development and agile testing firsthand. So I'll also talk about some of the examples of how we hit these problems and how we overcame some of these problems on our own team. And because Visual Studio is the greatest developer tool on the planet, and it has nothing to do with the fact that I work on the team, all my demos are going to be based on Visual Studio. So how many people here have not used Visual Studio ALM? Cool, I like the answer. OK. So what is agile testing? Anyone in the audience wants to take a shot? Oh, the first 3 people to give answers will get sweatshirts. Still no answers? Danny, what does agile testing mean to you?
I guess there's an element to the fact that we need to do more exploratory-based testing, but also be more efficient about the manual testing that we would normally do.
OK, more of exploratory testing. OK, anybody else wants to take a shot? Angela.
It means building quality in rather than trying to test it in afterwards.
Nice. Who was that? Jez. Jez doesn't get a sweatshirt.
Continuous.
Yes. It's continuous testing. Yeah, that's a good one. Angela?
Yeah, I was essentially going to say it's more keeping testers in an iterative fashion of testing as opposed to waiting till the end.
OK, that's a good one. Making sure that testers are involved all through the cycle rather than a separate testing phase. Making sure quality is built in rather than included as a separate exclusive distinct phase later. So agile testing actually, really the crux of agile testing is to make sure that what Jez was mentioning, that we build quality into the product and not really treat it as an afterthought at the end of it. And when we say quality, it's really centered around customer value. Right? Agile development is really all about making sure that we ship early and often the bits that are really useful to customers. So the end productivity or end results of a team is really measured on the basis of customer value rather than a bunch of artifacts or software that you produced. So what are the key shifts that we see in agile testing as compared to traditional software development or traditional software testing that a lot of us have been used to over the past decade? The first one is really that the job of testers on an agile team, or for that matter, all members on an agile team, is to facilitate the shortest possible path to customer value. Many times we treat testing jobs as, hey, these are the people that are the brakes in the system, or these are the people that are the gates to the system. Really, agile testing needs a bit of a shift in thinking in terms of what is the role of a tester on a team, right? So the fundamental point that agile testing or agile development really makes is that the end customer value you deliver to users should really be useful to your customer and in a form that he can consume. So as testers, we really need to ask ourselves the question of, what can I do to ship the right customer value faster? So that's one critical difference between what we tend to do on traditional software development and testing teams and on agile testing teams. Second, quality is a collective responsibility. It's no longer just the domain of, oh, here are a bunch of software test engineers. They're going to magically build quality into our application. So developers can just write some trash and throw it over the wall. Right? Quality is really the responsibility of everyone on the team and not just the domain of a bunch of testers sitting somewhere on a test team. And finally, really when quality becomes a collective responsibility and everyone's thinking about customer value, the only way you can ship early and often is to make sure that you have continuous quality built into your product. So there are separate release cadences that go with different projects, right? But the whole point of being on an agile team is that you get to ship what customers want as often as possible and as fast as possible. And the most reliable way to do that really is to ensure that the software you're shipping or your product really has a constant quality level. So at the end of the day, really what matters is not how many lines of code you wrote as a developer, how many bugs you filed as a tester, but really what was the customer value you shipped and how fast did the customer get this to solve his own problems. So these are some of the fundamental changes or shifts in thinking that you need to bring about in order to figure out what is it that I should do differently on an agile development team as a tester as compared to what I was doing previously. So what are some of the common challenges we encounter while doing agile testing? So a lot of people in the audience said they were testers. What are some of the common challenges that you've encountered? Anyone? Agile testing is easy. There are no challenges.
Regression testing.
Regression testing? What about regression testing?
It just gets bigger and bigger, so the sprints are short, but really we need to take this little increment and fit it into the wider product or solution or whatever it is. But testing needs to happen to prove that increment has not broken all of the other stuff.
OK, that's a good one. So how do I deal with the growing set of regression tests as I go through more and more sprints and manage that in a more efficient way to make sure I'm still shipping often enough? Yes?
Code is in my world, code is still not being delivered quickly enough to really allow the time it takes in a 2-week sprint to really have the definition of done reached.
I see.
From a quality standpoint. It's a mindset that we still have a tendency to code the whole soup to nuts feature, right? Instead of in the modular way where we can start testing right away.
So you're not really testing often enough. There's still in the 2-week cycle, you have like a dev phase and a test phase. OK. OK. Anything else? Yes, ma'am.
Sometimes the acceptance criteria isn't defined well enough, so we don't know what the expected value is.
Interesting.
Hard to start tests.
OK, so you don't really know what you're testing for because the acceptance criteria is not very clearly defined. Because sometimes agile development's associated with a fairly liberal process, so not all of the artifacts that you need tend to get generated when you want to. Interesting. What else?
Or if it is, it's ignored, and you tend to accept that anyway, we're at the end of the sprint, so we don't have time to make a working product. We'll move that to the next sprint.
OK, so story spillover is still a problem whether you're doing agile or traditional software development. You still have to cut features because you didn't finish on time. Yes?
Similar to what this gentleman said here, I mean, it's reality. You still have to have devs finish completing something before someone can test it. There's still a phase there. As soon as the dev sits down, there's nothing yet. He's got to type something in, it's got to compile. Then tests can only take place. You can't test it before it's actually a reality.
Fair enough. So we'll talk about some of the challenges that you guys mentioned here. The first one we'll talk about was what you were talking about is how do you generate the right documentation despite doing lightweight testing, and especially testing when it's done by the whole team. We said quality is a collective responsibility. Both developer and test teams, and in fact, even business stakeholders are responsible for quality of what you deliver. And in those cases, you really have a whole lot of people doing testing, but you also have some documentation needs to make sense of what was the testing that you did in maybe a few sprints ago or the last sprint. There is a basic need for documentation in order to maintain some sort of rigor in the system. So how do you really trade off and create a good balance between generating the right artifacts and doing lightweight testing that's easy enough to be done by the whole team and not necessarily the domain of a set of people? The second one is what was mentioned earlier in the discussion, which is how do I do rapid, reliable, and repeatable testing in each iteration? Now, keep in mind that for agile testing or for any agile software development team to work, the size of iterations in the cycle should be reasonably small because you want to ship as early and often as possible to make sure you're getting more and more customer feedback that you can incorporate. Now, given iterations are shrinking, the amount of testing you need to do is not going to shrink through the overall product cycle, right? So you are going to start generating more and more testing needs, and how do you keep on top of it as you go through more iterations? How do you make sure that the testing you do is fast enough to adapt to the new shorter iteration cycle? And how do you make sure that it's reliable and repeatable enough that regression test style of testing is really accommodated for? The last one we'll talk about is mostly the crux of agile testing. We talk about continuous quality and making sure that quality is built in rather than built into the product in a separate phase. But how do you really build continuous quality when the rate of churn that's happening on the development team is very high? So build generation, if you look at it as one of the metrics, is going to go through the roof when you start doing agile development, right? You're going to generate more and more builds that need to be tested, that need to be certified. You need to be ready to call a build as done, and ready to ship to customer more often than not. So how do you deal with the concept of building continuous quality, which is the fundamental tenet of agile testing? So we'll look into each of the challenges that I've listed here. I've picked 3. I think I heard some other interesting challenges in the audience as well. If there's time left at the end of it, we'll actually have a discussion around those as well. And we'll talk about some practices that can help overcome each of these challenges, right? So let's dive right into the first one. We talk about lightweight and ubiquitous testing. You want to make sure that when you're on an agile team, everybody gets to be able to test, but your tooling or your processes or practices should really support that. And you should make sure that all of this gets done in a short cycle. So the first impediment you typically run into is what was mentioned earlier. There's no pre-planned detailed test documentation available, right? So there is no opportunity for people to actually sit down and take a few weeks and define a test spec, a test strategy, detailed test case documentation, reams and reams of docs that you can actually rely on, because the product would actually have changed underneath you, right? The point of getting earlier and faster customer feedback is you want to incorporate that change and make sure that your product's really meeting the end customer need. So what do we do in cases where there is no time to really generate pre-planned detailed test planning documentation? The flip side of this problem is many of us are in industries where there is a need for compliance. There is a need for auditing, for regulatory measures. So you can't just go and say, hey, here's a build that I'm going to ship out to customers. I have no idea what I did on this build, because I'm not generating a whole lot of documentation. So there are documentation needs in several industries that you just cannot bypass. So you need some amount of documentation as to what kind of testing did you do? Did you really pass through the critical set of acceptance criteria, the set of regulatory tests that were there? And there is a need to maintain all of that documentation as you go through along the sprint. And given that testing gets done by the whole team, there are different forms of testing that each of the team members do, right? It's not always that everybody does all kinds of testing. We talked about regression testing, which is typically done by testers to ensure that as we build more and more of the product, we're not really breaking scenarios that we had already built out prior to this. So typically on agile teams, product owners or the business stakeholders end up doing what we call user acceptance testing, to make sure that really the end product is doing what they intended it to do when they defined what the requirements were. So there are a bunch of business stakeholders that would like to do fairly lightweight acceptance testing, which doesn't involve a whole lot of process or writing down a bunch of test cases or generating a whole lot of artifacts to make sure that you've delivered what you want to do. Developers tend to do test-driven development, or even if you're not on a team where developers are doing test-driven development, there's a bunch of unit testing that developers do to make sure that their components are really working as they'd like to. And at a unit testing level, really what you're testing is the subcomponents of the system. So you're not really putting together all the components of the system and making sure that the end user behavior is as it should be, but you're making sure that each one of the components are functioning as they should. And this is really the heart of testing your entire application. Unless your unit tests are running and they're passing in green all the time, there is no point in you doing a whole bunch of other higher level abstraction tests on top of it. So developers want to do unit testing in a way that's very friendly to them in their own environment that's familiar. And then the QA team really has to do a bunch of other kinds of testing. Regression testing is one of them. End-to-end scenario testing is another. You want to actually step into the customer's shoes and see, okay, so now that the the product owner has said that here is what the application should behave like, does this really help me if I were the customer? So if you were building a healthcare system, and if you were a doctor, you really want to step into the doctor's shoes and see and explore the system and see, is it really giving you the amount of value that you wanted as an end user? So the QA team tends to do a bunch of testing called exploratory testing, where you're primarily testing for customer value, right? You're not testing for conformance to the spec. You're not testing for corner cases in one particular scenario, but you're really testing for, is this doing what the customer wants me to do in the end, and is it useful for me, right? So there are a variety of testing practices associated with agile testing. Now, the challenge with this is really there are different levels of abstraction in testing, and you need to make sure that they all come together and form a cohesive whole when you actually go ship the product, right? So what's a good way to make sure that all the different kinds of testing that's involved in the testing team is actually stored in a way that it gives you one unified picture at the end of when you want to go deliver the product? So I'm now going to show you a bunch of demos around Visual Studio test tooling that we have, where we've explicitly tried to address the problem of, we know that testers don't have a whole lot of pre-planned test documentation, but we'd really like to self-document a bunch of artifacts which are interesting for history and auditing purposes as they go along and do testing. And given the fact that the entire team is involved in testing, we really wanted to make sure that the test tools that we deliver are very lightweight and accessible via a browser rather than a thick client where you have to ask your product owners to really go install something on their machine just to do a bunch of lightweight testing. So let's go directly into the browser. How many of you guys were in Brian Harry's keynote yesterday? Okay, so you saw the test hub. So what I've done here is I've connected to Visual Studio Online using my own account. And in here, you notice that there's now a hub called Test Hub. This is intended for all team members that want to do any kind of testing to just log on to the browser, go to the Test Hub, and do any kind of testing that is interesting. So what I'm showing you here is really, as a product owner, I'd like to ensure that I had defined a user story on a particular application. I had defined acceptance criteria, saying here is what the user story should match when you say that you're done on the user story. Now, given that as a product owner, I had already done that in TFS, I'd really love for the tool to give me a way where I can do testing. I can see the acceptance criteria, do the testing, and say, hey, I'm done. Go ship this particular user story. So when I log on to the Test Hub, I see that the user story that I've defined there has a test suite created for it. We automatically create a requirement-based test suite when pointed to a user story. So the user story actually says, as a user, I can use the ALM site to navigate the program and look at sessions. So the product that I'm currently testing is the ALM Summit website. And I want to make sure as a product owner that users can navigate to this and program SCED reflects accurately in the site. So I have a bunch of test cases here that are automatically created based on acceptance criteria. So I can go pick any of these tests and say run. So it opens a test runner for me in the browser where it shows me what were the acceptance criteria that I was really supposed to test for as a product owner. Right? So here I see that there are a set of very simple steps that says log on to the website, click on a particular set of links, and make sure that it's really showing what I intended it to show to end users. So let me launch a Chrome browser. Okay. And go to the website. I say, OK, I logged on to the website, and I want to click on the program link and verify that the program actually shows up. So it shows me the conference program and what are the different tracks in it. Yeah, sounds OK. So I'm going to pass this. And I'm now going to click on the schedule link. That's what the test case is telling me to do. So I go click on the schedule link and see that it's showing me a day-by-day schedule. So everything looks good on this user story. So I can say that, you know what, I've done my user acceptance testing on this. So let me just go past this. In the case that I actually found a problem with the website, right, I can go say, you know what, this user story is no good. The acceptance criteria I had defined on this didn't really work, and say why it didn't. So I'll say schedule is not showing in the font I like. I'm a product owner from hell, so I reject user stories on arbitrary reasons. So then I go say create a new bug. And when I do that, the bug actually captured all the set of acceptance criteria detailed test steps that I had. And it showed me here directly what those steps were. So it tells me what had passed, what was failed. It's simple enough for a product owner to not feel completely bogged down by doing testing. All of this is happening on the browser, so really there's no installs, et cetera, associated with it. And I can just go type out a bug title here, and I'm done. Rejecting story because of font issues. So I save and close this. And here, what happens is the bug that gets created automatically gets linked to the user story. So you see, I'm actually generating traceability through the system. Now when the developer or the tester really comes and looks at the story, the developer gets a bug assigned to him saying, you know what, your PO has rejected the story because of this bug. He can go directly track back to what was the user story that I've rejected because all the work items are linked. He gets to see the test result and what exactly I have done as part of the test using the test steps. And when he fixes the bug, it automatically gets associated with this particular user story. So the product owner knows that, hey, you know what, the bug that you filed in your acceptance testing has now been fixed, and go run just that one particular test when you come back. So I save and close this, and I go back to the test hub. And here, I see that this particular test has failed. I could choose to run a bunch of other tests or bulk edit them or do a bunch of common test operations, which are fairly lightweight. So this hub is really intended to be used by developers or business owners, product owners or testers alike to do some form of very lightweight testing. Now, going back to the second aspect of the challenge, which is, hey, I want to do exploratory testing where I'm really testing for customer value, so I don't have a whole lot of pre-planned testing defined. Like the test cases I had just defined here had some simple steps, but they still had a bunch of test cases with steps defined. What if I don't have anything? I just want to log on to the website and see what are interesting things about the website, and as a summit attendee, will the website really be useful to me or not? So for that, I can go do exploratory testing that generates a bunch of interesting documentation along the way. So I'm going to show you that, on the client. So here on the client, you basically see a symmetric view. It's exactly the same thing. I've connected to the same TFS server, so I can go to the familiar test hub, and I can pick the particular user story that I want to go do exploratory testing on and say, hey, go explore this particular work item. So everything that all the testing that I do automatically gets linked to this particular user story, and bugs and test cases get automatically a set of traceability through the entire system. So let me show you that in the end instead of babbling in the beginning. So I say, OK, let me start this testing. And here, there is really no instructions for me as a tester as to what I should really be doing. So I'm just going to open the website, explore it, play around for a little bit, and see if it's useful to me in a given context. So let me go open a new window and go to ALM Summit again. So I launched the website. And what do testers normally do? If they want to make sure that customers are really getting value out of it, they're going to behave as a customer would. So as an end summit attendee, I'd really like to go see if it has the program, if it has the schedule, logistics, does it have the right Twitter feed, details, all of that stuff. So I'm just going to go check out a bunch of things that you can do. Conference registration. Oh, wow, I didn't know it's that expensive. But that's not a bug I can file. So I go see logistics. Interesting. Let me see if the map and directions are proper for people to reach this. Well, it sounds correct. So let me go back to registration and try registering. Oh, it's sold out, but perhaps they'll let me register again. And yes, indeed, they're letting me register. But this does not sound very sensible. We are on day 4 of the conference, so really we should not be letting users register for the conference. Now, the product owner didn't really go define an acceptance criteria that said, you know what, bar all users from registering on day 4 of the conference. But as a tester, when I'm putting myself in the shoes of the end consumer, I feel like this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So I say, you know what, add a screenshot that shows, hey, this thing is still enabled. I'd like to see this disabled. So I can go do a bunch of annotation on it right there without having to leave the tool. And I say, don't let me register. But then I did a number of things to reach this particular place, right? Now, if I want to go explain to the developer that this is really what you have to do in order to repro the bug, I have to enter a set of instructions. But I'm a lazy tester. I don't want to do that. So I hit create bug. And what happens is that there is a set of interesting images and directions that are automatically generated for me that kind of gives you a story of what the tester did so far, right? So really what I wanted to do was I wanted to click on this particular registration link on the register now, and here I want you to disable this. So I can, instead of include all the set of actions that I did, because I was really exploring the product and it's not interesting for the developer to see the entire set, I go click on change steps and I say, you know what, pick the last few actions. That should make sense. He can figure out where exactly I clicked and what I did. So I choose the last 3 actions and it tells me what clicks I did, what data I entered, etc. And that gets automatically stored in the bug. So I say, OK, here's a bug. Don't let me register on day 4. At this point, I could go file this bug on the developer, and he can go fix it, and I'll get a notification back. But what is more interesting is that I want to make sure that this particular bug does not regress in the next sprint. So really, I'd like to go create a test case that makes sure that the same error does not recur in the next sprint. But I don't really have a set of test cases I started from, right? So I can go hit save and create test at this point, and it'll automatically generate a test case with the right instructions and images for me to make sure that the same bug is linked with another test case. And when the bug gets fixed, we point you to the right test case to run in order to validate that the bug has been fixed. So while the tester was doing exploratory testing, she's actually creating a trail of documentation of artifacts that you can go back and use in later sprints. So you can do a number of interesting things with exploratory testing here. We typically see testers spend a few hours kind of playing with the product and come up with most of the interesting bugs. And this really takes away the onus, the burden of having to go document all of those things explicitly and just focus on the creative aspect of testing, which is really to break software. So I say end testing, and I go back and I see that the session actually has a set of details about all the testing that I did, all the artifacts I created, what were the images I generated while doing testing, etc. And I go to the bug and I see that it has the set of images that we already stored. Now, what's interesting is, as a developer, sometimes these instructions may not be sufficient for you to actually go reproduce the bug. So at this point, you'd really like to go and say, what other information can you tell me about this particular bug? There are a number of things that we actually collect while testers do testing using the tool, and it's also possible to customize what you really want to take into a bug. But we collect a bunch of data by default, which is most interesting and most commonly used in case of reproducing bugs by a developer. So there's something called an action log, which is essentially a full-fledged view of the set of actions that the tester did. So instead of just pointing to the control that the tester clicked on, it captures the whole screen and shows the control in context of that screen. And note that this shows the entire list of actions. Sometimes bugs get generated in the context of you probably did a set of operations before that manifested the bug, but you haven't really included that in the repro steps. So here, the developer can actually drill down into the entire set of actions that the tester might have done while actually testing the application. There's also an ability to go record the entire screen while the tester was doing testing. So clicking on the video recorder link is going to play a video of the screen when the tester was testing and this particular bug manifested. So the video recording, note that it actually starts from the point where you've said, here are the interesting set of steps for me. So it took me halfway into the video and is showing me the video from the point of time that I actually filed the bug. So system information actually collects more information about the test machine and what kind of operating system were you running, what was the memory usage, what was CPU usage, and a bunch of other interesting infrastructure information about the test machine. So essentially, using this, you can actually start with nothing, start from scratch, where you had zero documentation, and go create interesting artifacts along the way, and make sure that user stories, test cases, and bugs are linked, such that at the end of a sprint, you really have a holistic picture around, here are the set of stories I've tested with these test cases, and here are the set of bugs that I've generated because of that. Any questions? Uh-huh.
So the acceptance criteria was already defined inside of TFS?
Yes, the acceptance criteria was defined, and a set of simple test cases were created.
All we saw was a user story, but the assumption is there's underlying acceptance criteria there.
Yes.
That generates the test case. Are those generated automatically based on the acceptance criteria?
No, I actually populated a set of simple test cases based on the acceptance criteria. But that's an interesting thought. We could actually scan the acceptance criteria and create test cases. OK, so diving right into OK, sure, I'll put it on the backlog. I no longer own that piece, so I'll be glad to go put it on somebody else's backlog. Oh, yeah, thank you. Well reminded. Yes, Anna Rousseau, who's one of our test MVPs, actually has a tool that does that. Thank you. OK, so just to make sure that I'm on track to let Sumit do a bunch of demos as well at the end, we'll dive right into the second challenge. This is one of the most common challenges that we hear on Agile teams, where we want to make sure that there is rapid, reliable, and repeatable testing that happens in every sprint. So you see the importance of test automation automatically rises, because that's one of the easiest ways to ensure that you're doing testing fast and it's reliable and repeatable. So there is a bunch of a class of tests that we spoke about, which are regression tests, end-to-end scenarios that you want to make sure are functioning sprint after sprint, that are interesting to go automate to make sure that you have enough room for exploratory testing on new customer value while ensuring that everything is functioning as it should. So one of the challenges associated with test automation is that as your test cycles decreases, because your iterations in an agile team are really shorter and shorter, you want to make sure that you do the right classes of testing in an automated fashion. So there are different test types you can employ. For performance testing, you probably want to write a bunch of load tests. For functional testing, you want to write a bunch of UI-based automation. For integration tests, you probably want to write a set of API-based automation. So there are different classes of automation that you could really go right. But one of the interesting challenges that we see in the recent times is that as applications become more and more complex, the need to test it across a complex test configuration matrix also increases. So it's no longer as simple as, hey, I went and ran this set of automation on some different OS combinations, and I know that this application works, and I want to make sure that this functions all the time. As you see more of the devices proliferating into the market, as you see more browsers opening up with choices, et cetera, you want to make sure that all your consumers have a good experience, which means you need to write test automation that will actually function very well across each of these different configuration types. Now, holistically, there are a number of solutions in test automation that you could actually employ. There are load tests, there are web tests, there are unit tests, regression tests, UI automation tests. But you want to make sure that the automation you write really covers a gamut of end configuration scenarios that your users are going to hit. So we'll talk about one particular challenge around how do you make sure that your automation runs across each of these different platforms, right? So really, you need to make a choice in terms of first figuring out and defining what are interesting platforms for your end users. Testing across multiple browsers is now no longer a sophisticated thing. It's mostly a requirement, right? You're pretty sure that if you're building a website, people are going to really hit it from various different browsers. It would be really nice if there were a way through which you could write automation for a particular browser and then go use the same test automation, make sure that it runs well on another set of browsers. So what we've done with the latest update in Visual Studio is that for folks that are using Visual Studio Automation, coded UI tests in particular, we make sure that the same test that you've recorded on IE can go back and play on different browsers using the same code base with just switching the browser type. So let's quickly launch into Visual Studio to see how that works. Is this visible at the back? Yeah. OK, great. So how many people here are familiar with coded UI, by the way, coded UI tests? Wow, a whole bunch. OK, that's nice. So I'm going to skip directly into, I already have a coded UI test project created in here. What we typically do when generating coded UI tests is I can go and say, you know what, I want to add a new coded UI test in here. And in order to really go do recording on this particular set of actions, I just go launch the coded UI recorder. So it's a simple record and playback experience. And I'm going to go record this on, I'm going to first go record what happens on the ALM Summit website on my favorite browser, which is not Chrome. So I start, and I say, OK, go launch into ALM Summit. And let's try and see the registration page. We go to register now. And I'm going to type my email address. And I say continue. And I could actually continue with a series of actions here in order to complete the registration. But I'm going to now generate this code and make sure that the same thing works on other browsers. So let me go generate this and say start registration process. What it's really doing is it's recording all of these actions and generating APIs in the background for doing these set of actions on a particular browser. So I'm done here. I say, OK, now go back and play this for me. I'm hoping the demo gods are appeased because I just changed the demo script dynamically. So it opens the website in IE. It does a bunch of clicks that I did before. It's going to the register now tab, typing out the email address, and we're done. So it ran the whole thing in 14 seconds. Now I want to make sure that people using the ALM Summit website have a similar experience no matter what browser they're using. So how I really go switch it is I go to the coded UI test method and I say, now I'd like to run this in a Chrome window. So I say current window, browser window.current browser is Chrome. We also support Firefox in update 1. So I basically make that one-line change and say, run the test again. So now it's going to execute the same series of actions on a different browser. What we're really doing is we're leveraging Selenium underneath to actually go run the same sequence of actions on different browsers, on Chrome and Firefox. So you can use the same test method that you've generated and run that across multiple browsers by making a simple code change. OK, so the second time it ran, it took about 6 seconds extra, but it actually went through the entire test process on a different browser and came back with the result. So now it's pretty simple for testers to really go switch and multiplex across browsers and use the same test automation base to cover a series of different configuration matrices. Questions?
How did coded UI test runs show up in the summary screen that you showed before? You had a summary screen where it showed where the developers could go and see, everybody in the team could go and see
Right.
results of the test and the specs. How would coded UI test show up there?
So in the first version of the test hub that we've released, we've not yet integrated the automated tests in there. But this is part of the TFS preview, so we'll keep updating and layering functionality on top of that. It's not yet there. OK, so getting into the last challenge that we talked about on agile teams. How do you build continuous quality into the system? So we all kind of concluded that if we want agile testing to be successful, testing is not really a separate phase in the entire life cycle. So you want to make sure that you're running a bunch of tests and you're ensuring quality throughout the entire life cycle on every discrete unit of customer value that you ship. And what's the most common unit of customer value that we ship? It's really a build. So the easiest way to ensure that you have continuous quality enabled through the entire life cycle and you have a handle on how what the quality of your particular build is to make sure that you're testing every build with a known set of tests and assigning a particular quality level to each build. So at any given point of time, you know that the build that got generated is either available and ready for user consumption or not, right? So CI, or continuous integration, is really the first basic step in this particular journey. How many people here do continuous integration on your projects? OK. How many people feel it's not very effective? OK. Awesome. So continuous integration is one of the easiest practices to really drive quality into your system upfront. You're bringing together all artifacts of the system together and making sure that you're running a set of unit tests or component-based tests that are going to tell you how each of the components that make up your build are behaving. Now, given that it passes a particular quality check, right, there are a bunch of tests you want to do post-deployment of the application. Because really, when you want to go ship a particular build to an end customer, you want to make sure that the end customer's experience is not broken, because that's what matters, right? And testing needs to be done at one level of abstraction on top of unit testing, which is to make sure the entire system works together well. So the automation that you've written in order to ensure that you have rapid, reliable, and repeatable testing in the system, a great practice is really to reuse that as part of your continuous integration system itself to make sure that every build that is done in continuous integration gets deployed, and you run a set of end user tests on top of it. So that way you know that all the builds that are getting out of the pipeline are really either passing or failing the end user acceptance test. So the bunch of tests that you have in test automation, it's easy to actually go wire that with particular build definition in Visual Studio via what we call as the build, deploy, test workflow. How many people here have used lab management in Visual Studio? Okay, quite a few of you. That's nice. So build, deploy, test is really a mechanism through which you can ensure that every build that gets generated is deployed onto a particular test environment, and then a set of post-deployment tests like UI automation or acceptance tests get run on that particular build, resulting in a build of known quality to the end consumer that gets out of the system. Now, taking that one step further is really the ability to do build, deploy, test continuously in the cloud. Now, as the cadence of generating builds actually increases, as the frequency of generating builds increases, you're hard-pressed for creating more and more environments for deploying the build in. And cloud is really the easiest and most natural fit in that scenario to make sure that you spin up an environment dynamically, go deploy your build, and run a set of tests on it. To wrap up the set of demos we saw, essentially, we talked about agile testing and how it can really be applied across a variety of needs and how you can strike a balance between somewhat contradictory requirements that you hear on agile development teams. Most of these challenges can really be eased with the right set of practices and tools. So really there's no silver bullet. You need to assess the requirements of your team and adopt a set of tweaked processes and practices that will help you with doing this. We talked about doing lightweight, ubiquitous, self-documenting testing. That one was a fairly easy thing to do with the right set of tooling, but essentially you need to make a call on what is the amount of artifacts you want to generate and what is the amount of ease you want to build into the system through which everyone on your team can be involved with quality of the application. Building rapid, reliable, and repeatable test automation, again, is a huge area. The demo I showed there was really mostly targeting how you do multi-browser testing. That's just a sliver of the problems you'll encounter with test automation. But there's an amazing wealth of information about how you plan out your test automation strategy, what are the right set of tools and practices to use for each of these things out there, which will be very useful in planning how you want to make sure that your agile testing strategy works. And finally, last but not the least, the very first basic step in ensuring continuous quality is to make sure that the builds you're generating, the fundamental units of customer value you're generating in your team, goes through different levels of quality checks and not just stop at the unit test level. So that you, at any point of time, you're able to answer the question of, hey, is this build shippable to the end customer, and can I actually go deliver it to somebody so that they can use it in real time? Great. Thank you. You guys have been an awesome audience. Any questions? The folks that gave answers, by the way, before, please collect your sweatshirts from Sumit. He'll be hanging out here. I'll take questions for the next 3-4 minutes if Keith lets me. Yes, sir.
So you mentioned, rapid and reliable automated testing.
Yeah.
So one of the areas where we've had challenge balancing that was integration testing, where we found we can easily automate it, but getting it to be rapid is not necessarily
Yeah.
always working. So how do you deal in an agile environment when you have massive integration testing requirements?
Yeah, so that one's more of a question of how do you deal with integration? Sorry, should I repeat the question, by the way? Could you guys hear the question? The question was, how do you deal with integration testing of pretty huge components that end up being like massive tests, but you also have to deal with shorter iterations? So really, there's no one answer that I can recommend there, but a set of practices which are good to follow there is, if your unit testing is comprehensive enough, your integration test suite really has to be pretty thin. Generally, the most common mistake teams tend to make is they tend to try and automate everything across the end-to-end scenario and build a really fat set of unreliable and flaky UI automation tests that are not always required. So if your unit testing strategies are well thought out and you're building quality into each of the components, your integration suite should really result in a fairly thin set of tests which are manageable. I think the test run time, the test execution time is a good metric to apply on yourself and make sure that your integration test should really pass in this many minutes And that'll kind of drive you to think harder about, is this really a required integration test? Am I using the right code coverage or churn metrics to assess what are the right integration tests to author and run? I have some explicit examples of what we did on one of our legacy teams. If you're interested, just sync with me offline and I can take you through some specific examples. Okay, great. Thank you very much, guys.